Welcome everyone to TheCommandZone.com. We have another EDH match for you today. This is game 2 between Zegana and Wort. We have Brian playing Zegana here on the left-hand side of your screen, and Ryan again playing Wort. So this is game 2, and we are going into our mulligans. You can see Brian on the left here. He is taking some of the larger spells out of his hand. You saw a Recurring Insight, and I don't know what the other card was, but you can see him getting rid of a lot of the higher casting cost spells in his hand, and that is in order to make sure that he can make his land drops at the early stages of the game. So he has, from what I can tell, only 2 lands in his hand at the start of the game, which is slightly unfortunate for Brian. He wants to make sure that he can hit all of his land drops at the beginning part of the game, in the early stages of the game. And I do recommend for all you guys who do use the half Paris or partial Paris mulligan rules, that you do get all of the larger spells out of your hand at the beginning of the game whenever possible. And I know it's tempting to keep those cards in your hand, but you really want to make sure that you can hit your land drops early so that you can develop your board and make it to the long, to the end of the game, to a long game where you can take advantage of your opponents and stuff. Okay, so here we go. So it looks like Brian drew a third land, and Ryan on the other side of the board is kind of behind because he wasn't able to cast that Land Elf until turn 2, which is pretty bad for him. It's unfortunate. But he is able to smack Brian down to 39 with an attack from the Land Elves and cast the Wood Elves, which is ramping him out a bit. So with another land in his hand, he should be able to cast that Wort next turn. Now, lucky for Brian, he was able to top deck a Cultivate here, where he can ramp out himself, putting an island into play, and we'll see what he puts into hand here. I think he's looking for a forest. I don't know. Nope, he's looking for another island. Okay, so he'll have 3 islands and 2 forests in hand. And I believe he's going to pass the turn after that. Yep, here we go. Now, if Ryan is able to play another land here, he is going to get that Wort onto the field as fast as possible. And there's his land. Alright, so he's got 6 available, 7 available. So he's going to cast his Wort. Hopefully he's got no more elves. Alright, so he's going to smack Brian down to 37 from the Land Elf and the Wood Elves, and he's going to pass the turn right back to Brian. We'll see what Brian can do here. So we know he's got an island in his hand, and some other cards. Let's see. He draws, I believe that was a Tooth and Nail from Modern Masters, and he's going to drop that island. Now he's got a choice here. He has a lot of cards in his hand. He can cast the Oracle of Moldiah or the Glenalendra Archmage. I would probably cast the Glenalendra because I would want to stop something that Ryan is doing next turn. We don't want him to take too much of a board advantage here. So for me, it would be the Glenalendra. Let's see what Brian decides to do. I wouldn't fault anyone for casting an Oracle as well. That would help him ramp out and get through his deck a little bit faster. He'll be able to thin out a little more. Let's see what he decides to do. And I guess Brian is deciding to pass here. He's going to be a little more controlling, holding up that the mana drain to get some big spell out of Ryan's hand. So let's see. So Ryan makes another land drop, and I think this is a pretty poor draw for Ryan so far. It looks like he's got a lot of land in his hand and no instants and sorceries. We'll see what he can do this turn. And so it looks like he's just going to cast a Fauna Shaman this turn, which is quite unfortunate. He needs to take advantage of that Wort, the active Wort that he has there before Brian can really solidify his board and put down some huge threats. So what he's going to do here is attack for 7 with Wort, the 2 tokens, the Land Elves and the Wood Elves, putting Brian to 30. Not irrelevant. He's only got a few more points of damage left before he does win the game off combat damage. So it looks like Brian drew a, what was that? Seedborn Muse. He's counting up his mana, see what he can do. He does have a lot of options in his hand, and we'll see which one he decides to go with here. As a player watching this, or as just being in Brian's shoes right now, I think all of his options are very good, and he decides to go with the Glenalendra. That would be able to counter any instant sorcery through Glenalendra or a mana drain, which he does have in his hand. So now Ryan does make another land drop, and it looks like he has a land. What does he have? Looks like 2 lands and some kind of spell. I'm not really sure. So he's got an E-Witness that he's going to pitch the Fauna Shaman. And he's going to tutor up a creature. We'll see what he gets with this. There are a lot of options. So I think what Ryan is trying to do is play around that Glenalendra this turn and put some big threat onto the board that's going to be hard for Brian to deal with before he can really get anything else started. Now you can see that he's got a Crater Hoof Behemoth shuffle there to the top. Now this would be lethal, I believe, if he was able to resolve it. So this is a very good consideration for him. But he decides to pass it up now. And we'll see what he's going for. I guess he's going to set up. This creature is a setup creature. Okay, so he's going to go with the Regal Force and try and draw 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards. He wants to refill his hand for next turn. Now, I don't know if that is better than a Woodfall Prime, or I'm sorry, the Crater Hoof Behemoth, because if either of them were to resolve, I think he would win. So Brian would have to counter whatever it is, and he does with a very, very nice mana drain there. Now this is going to give Brian 7 extra mana next turn, and we'll see what he can do with it. I know, well, we know that Brian has a Tooth and Nail in hand, so he may decide just to Tooth and Nail out some combo, and we'll see what happens here. But we're not done with Brian's turn, so he's going to attack for 3 through the Glenalendra, putting Brian to 27, and he passes back. Alright, now here we go. So we have a Flooded Grove for the draw. We have 7 mana coming out during the main phase here from the mana drain. And it looks like he's using some of that mana. Let's see what he's using. I can't tell what's on the dice here, but it looks like he's using, I don't know, he's got Tooth and Nail put at the top of his hand. So he's using all 7. There it is, Tooth and Nail entwined for Brian. He's going to get something out of his deck. And I'm pretty sure Ryan is going to be quite unhappy with these 2. Let's see what he gets. Not really sure. I mean, there are, there's a multitude of cards that he could get. He is looking. We can see at the Woodfall Prime is right there. That is a possibility. I'm sure he's got a Acidic Slime or something like that. He's got a Kozilek he just passed by. I don't know what he is going to get. Let's see. He has his own Crater Hoof Behemoth in there as well, which he doesn't even look to put out on the board. He could go with an Avenger and a Crater Hoof. I don't know if that is lethal, but it might actually be lethal if he goes with those 2 cards right off the bat. Or at least he's going to Wrath Ryan's side. Okay, so one is Deadeye Navigator. Alright, that's a card we saw last game. And the other one is Sylvan Primordial. Okay, so what this is going to allow him to do is Machine Gun Ryan's lands away. And that is going to effectively end the game here. I think he wants to do this without going with some kind of infinite combo. But I think this is enough to just win the game. And from here, you can really see the power of Deadeye Navigator. This would not be anywhere as close to, a game if it was, first, let's just say, Sylvan Primordial and Woodfall Primus. If it was those 2, I think Ryan could come back pretty easily from that. He does have a lot of good draws in his deck, and he also has a Fauna Shaman out. He has enough mana to cast anything in his deck, so I think he'd be able to come back from that. But the Deadeye Navigator on the board really makes it very difficult for Ryan to come back from this one. And we'll see what Brian is going to do if he wants to just get rid of 2 more lands this turn, or... Okay, no. He's going to play the Seedborn Muse. And he's going to allow Ryan to untap. Now Ryan, we can see, has a land and something else in his hand. I'm not sure what it is, but he is allowing him to untap. Now Seedborn Muse will allow Brian to untap all of his permanents during each turn. So Brian will also get to untap his permanents. And from this point, it looks like he is going to be able to just destroy most of Ryan's mana base here. He'll have 3 activations. I believe he could have made 4 activations as well, but he wants to use the Glenalendra, which is pretty good. Alright, and we get a scoop. Thanks for watching. Come back next time.
Zegana wins.